What up, baby? It's the world famous Pain in the Ass, and when I need the scoop, I go to my man Scoop B. You're listening to Scoop B Radio, sports talk, hip hop, entertainment, everything. If we're gonna start it off, we might as well start it off right. Okay, I'm reloaded. You think you big time? Don't listen to Scoop B Radio. You're gonna miss out big time. Here comes the pain, and here comes the scoop. My man Brandon Scoop Robinson, baby.
Scoopy Radio, on the plane, on the train, in the car, everywhere you need to be.
Planes, trains, and automobiles.
All that. Make sure to subscribe to the Scoopy Radio podcast on all streaming platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn app, Stitcher app, iHeartRadio. Scoopy Radio gets 20 million streams annually, and one of the reasons why is because we bring newsmakers in the building. No different as we have my main man, Pots and Pans, Pan in the Ass, joins us.
Family.
Yes, sir. Bro, listen, he pulled over in the car.
Absolutely. I got pulled over, and then I pulled over to do this interview. It's like, coincide both things going on at once. So, when I give him a license and registration, I'm gonna tell him, I'm on a Scoopy podcast right now. You need to back up right here.
That's official. They're gonna let you go. You don't need your PBA sticker.
Well, this is the PBA card. This is the PBA card right here. I'm on Scoopy Radio. Listen, anybody out there, if you get pulled over, just tell them you're listening or you're gonna be on Scoopy Radio.
So it's just that easy.
That easy.
I like it, brother.
When you got connections like yourself,
Likewise, and listen, I believe it was the great Jay-Z that said, like Con Edison Flow, we're connected to a higher power.
Amen.
Perfect segue there. 27 years of a reasonable doubt.
It's like aliens are coming to abduct me. Somebody's pulling out in front of me. Pause.
No.
It's all good.
Listen, no, it's all good. Listen, you're listening to Scoopy Radio, so you're not gonna have any problems. But 27 years, reasonable doubt. Today. Where were you sitting when this whole album was a concept?
Well, I started off as an intern in the label, like earlier in that year. So like around January, February, I came over, and this was his own record company. It was very rare back then for an artist to have his own record label. You were signed to Def Jam, or you were signed to Cold Chillin' or Elektra or whatever. So this was a different kind. It was a rarefied air because the artist was there on a daily basis. So I started interning there, and Jay would be up there every single day. It's his label. He's running the day-to-day operations along with Damon and Biggs. So it was very much, hands-on. I was dealing with him on a daily basis, and this album was in the works. It actually had been recorded already. A lot of the stuff had been recorded already, to the point that I was on a street team and I was handing out these snippet tapes. So it was Dead President, was the single, but the B-sides back then, before it was Ain't No Nah, it was 4 songs that were like little snippets. It was Feeling It, Can I Live, and Can't Knock the Hustle, but with a different lyrics on there. He was rhyming about like battling somebody. I ain't trying to diss yours, young blood, get yours. I get mine. Thinking they plans, but you want the drama. If you ever violate, I put that on an ass. I put that on my mama. I'm all about the almighty. F working for Whitey. I'ma live love until they indict me. See, I got these feds breathing down my neck. You think I got time to mess around with rhymes and diss you? These are real facts you're listening to. You probably won't hear it till you're dead and your family's missing you. I used to be on the same bullshit. My rhymes could have that. My rhymes could have this. Bogus motherfuckers, take notice. The jigger forever like cops' guns. I stay loaded. About my paper, I run with international players. Fuck if you haters. No conversation, just a bunch of see you laters. So that was on, actually, Can't Knock the Hustle. It was on that beat. That was originally some of the lyrics on there, but he ended up using it for something else. But that was on the snippet tape. We were handing it out, and I was like, yo, this is pretty good. You know what I mean? Because coming through to a new label, you're handing out promotional items and stuff like that. You're listening, and you're like, all right, this is cool, or this is so. But I was listening to that snippet tape. I was like, I kind of like this. I want to hear the rest of these songs. I can't wait to hear it. So by the time I continued being there more and more often, I got familiarized with the songs. So when I finally heard them in their entirety, I was like, yo, this is actually really, really good work. And this is back in '96. You know what I mean? So this was around the times of lyricism. You had to be a lyricist. And I was like, yo, this guy is spitting. And I was always a Jay-Z fan, even from before then. You know, I was a Jay-Z fan from Can I Get Open? And then eventually In My Lifetime, the song. And then my biggest, which I consider his greatest work of all time, In My Lifetime, the Jazzo remix.
Mm-hmm.
What's the meaning? What's the meaning of life? It's the thought of a ride to make my eyes wide. I thought that song really embodied who Jay-Z is and kind of gave the world a blueprint who Jay-Z would be, of, you know, what his aim was in this game, in the street game, and in any other game that he involves himself with. I think that song was sort of like the catalyst. So I was already a Jay-Z fan, but then when I heard the stuff on the snippet, I was like, oh, this is like incredible stuff. This is up there. To me, it was up there with Big. It was up there with Nas. And back then, there wasn't too many people that were going to be in the same, you know, it's almost like you with sports. It's like saying, you know, a new player comes along, you're like, wow, this guy is so good. I put him in the same category as Mike or Kobe or now LeBron. Like that's rare for a kind of a rookie or maybe a journeyman that's finally got his shot in the league to be like, yo, this guy's on par with them. So I was very much a fan of his. And then the album started coming together little by little. There was no Brooklyn's Finest at that point. So he was working on that. That was supposed to be him by himself. So I remember listening to Brooklyn's Finest with him Dolo on it. And then, you know, as time went on, I got closer with the people in there because the environment was so different. It wasn't like a label because he owned it and Damon owned it and Biggs owned it. It was more like a street environment. It felt like we were hanging out on the corner more so than I was going to conduct business in a music entertainment business setting. When you get to that point, you know, as higher you go, you realize, okay, these people are more business. Whereas, you know, at the beginning of Roc-A-Fella, it was more like I was hanging out with my friends and they took a liking to me. And at the time I was very like frustrated in life. So I was very aggressive, screaming out, yelling out, and they accepted that. And that's something that wouldn't have been accepted had he been on a record label. You know, I would have been kicked out a long time ago, but instead, I guess, you know, looking back now, I think it spoke to their kind of mentality at that point too. They felt like I felt. I was frustrated and at the world, and I felt a lack of acceptance. And I guess they've always felt accepted because, you know, they're cool like that. But as far as the music business was concerned, they weren't getting that acceptance. So I guess in a weird way, I became sort of like the rally crier for the label. And you know, at the time I was also watching a lot of gangster movies, so I was incorporating a lot of those characters while I was being aggressive. And I think he's a big fan of those movies himself, and he saw something in me that I didn't realize that I had. And then the momentum started to, yo, you got to let that kid start off the album, man. You got to let him be on the album doing the crazy stuff that he's doing here at the record company.
So you said a few things. Scoopy Radio, joined by the one and only Pain in the Ass. Make sure to check out Scoopy Radio on all streaming platforms. Number one, I want to take a step back. You gave me the alternate lyrics to Can't Knock the Hustle.
Yes.
What or who was the catalyst to make him change those lyrics?
Well, see, one thing about the greatness about Jay-Z is there was Dead Presidents 1 and then there's Dead Presidents 2 as well. Like, I think he's such an artist, number one, you know, besides all the trimmings that he has around him, meaning, you know, he's got the style, he's got the clothes, he's got just the business acumen, he's cool, but at the very heart of Jay-Z is the talent. And as an artist, as a talented artist, you do a piece of work and after you do it, you forget about it and you move on to the next thing. But then that work becomes glorified, it becomes big. You're not satisfied with it. I could do that better. You know, this could be better done. So hence Dead Presidents 1, which is classic, and then come to closer to when the album finally drops, says, no, I want to switch it up. I got something new for that. You know, that was the old Dead President. I want to put on the new Dead President. So I think with Can't Knock the Hustle, there was no Mary at the time. So it was just Jay and, you know, this incredible beat that nobody did, famous nobody, but this is the real nobody.
Shameless plug.
Yes, shameless plug. That's me too in the streets. That's what they call me. There goes the shameless plug. But nobody did this incredible beat for Jay. And at the time, I guess those lyrics that I just quoted are a little bit aggressive. You know, it's more of a battle rap, if you will. It's more letting you know, like, you know, you're this way, I'm this way. And his whole thing at that time was, I'm on the inside looking out, you're from the outside looking in. So that battle rap was more like, you know, I used to be like you on that same BS. You know, my rhymes could do that, my rhymes could do this. I don't care about that no more. You know, like a cop's gun, I stay loaded. I'm all about the paper. So, you know, it was more aggressive, where when Mary got on it now and did that Michelle Morgan homage, you're taking up this time, who do you think? He heard that hook and said, okay, let me switch it up, because this is more now to me, you know, Can't Knock the Hustle always seemed to me like a dreamy song, like it's like a dream almost. Her singing on the hook, you know, this is kind of like not an unknown artist, but it's a new artist at the time, and you have Mary on your hook. It's a big deal back then, and even now to have Mary on your hook, and you kind of like not really as popularized as he is today. So he switched it up, and the song is like a dream. You ain't having it? Good. Me neither. Let's get together, make this whole world believe. He more made it of an anthem of, I'm coming now. You know, pause. I'm coming to the game. I'm in this game now. I left the streets. I had, whereas the first Can't Knock the Hustle, those lyrics I'm saying that I quoted before, was from a perspective of a person who had 1 foot in the streets and 1 foot in the music game. Whereas part two, or the one that the world would eventually hear, was all in, you know, putting all your chips on the table. Like, I'm in this game now. Like, I don't do that anymore. More like Carlito. And that's why I always attributed Jay to Carlito. And that's why most of the skits that I do on his projects are Carlito inspired, because he always reminded me of Carlito Brigante from Carlito's Way, the Al Pacino character that's played in that famous movie. And you know, he just said, that's it, I'm done with that world. I'm coming, just like with the club, with Carlito's with his club, because I got this club now and I don't do that anymore, KO. I'm going all in. So, and I'm out, you know, I'm out of the game. So I always felt that with Jay, that he was a person that now is out of that game and is looking to take over this game. And obviously we see 27 years later, that's absolutely what he did.
Black Album, the Allure song, the allure of the games keeps calling your name. And right. He actually made a reference to Carlito. He said, star and roll in Carlito's Way.
Yeah.
You and the ad-lib, were genius. The Tony Montana references and more. You said that you were encouraged to do that. The very first thing you hear, your voice on Reasonable Doubt.
Mm-hmm.
How did it just make sense? Was it you heard the song and then you did the ad lib? Did you do the ad lib first and then, like, how did that whole process take place?
Well, the story's a funny story. It's kind of a long story, but if it's okay, I'll try to condense it down as much as I can. Back in the summer of '95, my mother died when I was very young. I was 12 years old. So, and my father remarried when I was 2. They, you know, my mother and father divorced when I was 2. So I was living with my sister. My sister became my guardian. And in that summer of '95, it was just her and I. We got into a major fight. And she, you know, you're young. You're like, what, I'm like 16, 15 at the time. She kicks me out of the house. So I have nowhere to go. So I end up staying with my friend. You know, my friend is like best friend, lets me sleep over his house. It's summertime. And, you know, his mom was like, all right, cool. He could stay for a few weeks, but then he has to make up with his sister and go back. You know, we can't have him here. So it was summertime and we would hang out all night. You know, here we are 15, 16 years old. We're on the block hanging out and we're here with other friends and they start talking about the movie Scarface. You know, it's like 3, 4 in the morning on the block and they're like, yo, they're quoting lines from the movie to each other. And I'm sitting there puzzled, baffled. I'm like, hey, well, what are you guys doing? He's like, yo, we're like, they looked at me like I had 10 heads. Like, we're doing Scarface, man. What? You don't know what we're talking about? I was like, yeah, I think so. It's that movie where I say hello to my little friend or something like that. He goes, yo, you never seen that movie? I was like, nah, I never seen it. He goes, oh, man. He goes, yo, do me a favor, since he's sleeping over my house, lend us the movie so he can watch it for the first time. And the friend that was quoting the lines with my other friend said, no way, I watched that movie every single night. Back then it was a double tape. This was VHS. This is pre-DVD, pre-streaming, Netflix. This is when you had to have the VHS tapes, and there was 2 of them. So he tried to negotiate with, at least lend us one of the tapes. You're not gonna watch both of them. Lend us one tape so you can watch. It's like, nah, man. I stay up all the way till the end, and I put in a new one cartridge. But what I could do is I'll lend you Carlito's Way. It's basically like the same thing. He'll love it. So my friends that I'm staying with said, all right, cool, yeah, let's do Carlito's Way, 'cause you'll like that movie too. So we go to his house and we start watching it. He falls asleep. I'm sleeping on the floor. He's sleeping in his bed. I'm obviously have nowhere to go. I'm like, if you will, homeless at the time. So I'm just watching the movie, and I'm looking back constantly to have a reaction from him. And at first he's all excited, and about a half an hour later into the movie, I look back, he's fully asleep. So it's just me in this movie. It's me in this movie, and I end up watching the whole thing in its entirety. And then I rewind it and watch it again and again. And I ended up watching like 5 times in a row. The next morning or afternoon, because it's already late, I said, yo, that was an incredible movie. Thank you for letting me, watch that. I said, my favorite part is when he goes, okay, I'm reloaded. This and that. I'm doing like, what, you think you like me? And he looked at me and he said, yo, man, that's a terrible impression you're doing of him, man. You shouldn't even do that. You don't even sound nothing like him. Now, hip hop is funny because hip hop is all about taking a negative and flipping it into a positive, constructively, without violence, without all of just saying, him saying that to me really, really pissed me off that I don't sound like him. And it made me want to do it even more to people just to tick them off. So he kind of prepped me. So by the time I got to Roc-A-Fella, I was looking to piss people off with this impression, and little did I know that Jay-Z would be a huge fan of that movie and like it, and Damon, and especially Biggs, they would have me in their office like just doing lines all day. Meanwhile, I was supposed to be putting away boxes and getting people drinks from the store. I'm in Damon's office doing I Don't Like Boots. Everyone's laughing, everyone's going crazy. So eventually when it comes to pass that he has to be on the album, I went back and I watched Scarface. Now that I perfected, in my mind, Carlito's Way, I wanted to see Scarface. So there was this one particular scene that I liked where Tony Montana, the character, is kind of on the come up. He just came from Cuba, but he's washing dishes, and they're about to meet with these big time people that are going to connect them into that world that he would eventually take over. And he's talking to him. See, okay, all right. Big man, you want some big box, huh? Let's see how tough you are. You know something about cocaine? Dígame. You kidding me or what? There's a bunch of Colombians coming in Friday. New guys. They said they got 2 keys for us openers. Pure Coke or to Miami Beach. I want you to go over there. And if it's a say it is, you pay them, you bring it back. You could do that, you make $5,000. Meet at Bodegas, noon Friday. You get the buy money then. Oh, and Chico, if anything happens to the buy money, pobrecito. Jay-Z's gonna stick your heads up your asses faster than a rabbit gets fucked. So I just loved that monologue. I felt like he was talking to Tony Montana, but I was like, how dope would it be if it was like I was talking about Jay-Z to the whole music business? Like, he's written for people, he's already been bubbling, everyone knows who he is, so it's like, you're gonna be working for me. You know what I mean? And I wanted to kind of paint that picture with that monologue that I saw. And I noticed in hip hop, a lot of the beats that we like were inspired or taken from older beats that were already done in the 70s and 80s. They remake them, but they put a hip hop twist to them. They take the break beat of it. So I said, okay, I'm going to be like a producer would be. I'm going to be like DJ Premier, or I'm going to be like what Kanye is. I'm going to take the best part of a song and I'm going to flip it just with the break beat so the MC can rhyme to it. And it's going to be a dope beat. Bad, 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 bad boys. That's all remake of old, beats that we were kind of familiarized with too. Our parents heard that music. So I put my producer hat on for that moment. I was like, oh, wait a minute. My friends are sitting there quoting this movie. How dope would it be if I quote the movie, but on an album?
Yeah.
And I'm going to pertain it to the artist. I'm going to produce a skit for him so that it would kind of like speak to what he feels at that moment without rhyming it. Sort of a narration, like my favorite movie, Shawshank Redemption. What's great about that movie is Morgan Freeman's narration over. He's telling the story. He goes, and Andy walked in, he's telling that story. And that's what I love about Carlito's Way too, is Carlito is talking to you throughout the movie. A lot of those monologues that I did on Jay-Z's albums are from his narration portions of the movie, not him actually talking to anybody. He's
Yeah.
talking to you, the listener. So here's me in the club. You know, he's not talking to anyone. He's talking sort of to you. So that's what I wanted to do on Reasonable Doubt. I wanted to talk to you, the listener, and then the action scenes would come on, which would be Jay Ryman.
Tell me something. Did you ever meet Al Pacino?
I came very close. No, my girlfriend, God bless her, Crystal Mukai. Big shout out to Crystal, another shameless plug. We always hang out together, us, me, you, and her.
Yes.
She took me to this, The Godfather. They were doing something, I guess, with Tribeca Film Festival, and we stood next to each other. But we were about to get introduced by one of these PR people, but then they rushed him into one of these vans, and he had to go. So I came that close.
Wow.
But I never actually met him. But I'm very grateful to him, because him and his characters that he created or he portrayed changed my life. You know, these movies actually changed my life. I wouldn't be here talking to you right now if it wasn't for that. Very inspirational, very great. And I hope he understands the importance and imprint that he left not only on me, but in the whole hip hop community. You know, the movies like Paid in Full, like they're inspired by Scarface, you know, or the actual people in that movie, which were characters in the movie, but they're actual real people. The Alpos, the AZs, you know, even Jay-Z, they'll tell you they were all inspired by Scarface on a street level. You know, he made you want to go out there and do your thing on the streets because you wanted to be like Tony Montana. And then eventually those street people that were dwelling in the streets or running around in the streets got into the music business, and some of them became rappers, some of them became behind the scene people. But you know, it's all a chain reaction. And it stems from that.
You talked a lot about The Office. Back in the day, you hear people talk about The Office. You talk about, or you hear people give anecdote stories.
Mm-hmm.
I personally relate to those stories because of my family's businesses in Harlem, sneaker store and a men's shoe store, where
you were telling me, I remember that.
It's a mixture of locker room, office,
corner,
the corner, therapy session. There's a lot that goes into it. What was a typical 9-to-5 day?
Well, it's funny now because now it became very famous, but this was a regular occurrence on a daily basis at the office. Big shout out to Biggs, Kareem Biggs Burks, who is now on his Instagram. A lot of people repost and go follow his daily quotes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he'll say something like, you know, don't follow someone, be a leader, you know, and people love that. Now, we had a bulletin board when you first walked into the office that you can write with, you know, a marker. And on a daily basis, it would start off with Biggs' quote. So this is not new. And nobody knows this, you know, nobody knows about this because it became a thing now on social media with his quotes. But actually, that was a daily occurrence in that office. I would come from school. This was my senior year of high school, so I got out early. You know, you start early and you get out early. So I would get out like 12 o'clock and I would jump on the train. I went to John Brown High School in Flushing, Queens. I would jump on the 7 train and I would go to the office in downtown Manhattan. So by the time I got there, it was already 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon. So they had been there probably for a few hours because, you know, we would start like maybe noon. People would float into the office. So while I was there, the first thing I would notice is, you know, what did Biggs write today? What was his quote on that white chalkboard, if you will? But it's not chalk, it's a marker. And I would tag up something on there. I would say, you know, whatever, pain in the ass, or I would say something to rebuttal whatever he was saying. And then it was kind of like an intimate setting. It wasn't a huge office. It was a small office in a very nice location in the financial district downtown. So it was always packed around that time because it would be lunchtime. So there was a lot of activity going on downstairs. And the first office that you would see when you first walked in was my man Ray Ray's office. Now, Ray Ray's office was facing the World Trade Center, which was shadowing over us. That was also very like foreshadowing, you know, the World Trade Center, the 2 towers always represented power. And that's why, unfortunately, they felt the need to attack it. It represented excess and financial freedom and power. And it was very telling that his office, the first one you walk into, is right underneath it with that just like hovering over you. It lets you know, kind of gives you a little bit of a glimpse of what's going on here in this setting. Then as you walk through, there was a couple of other offices. Big shout out to Adrian Vargas, God rest his soul. He was the digital director who created the logo of Roc-A-Fella with the bottle, the champagne bottle with the record. He was very big for that. Then you had KB Payne, who was the publicist at the time. And then you had the biggest offices in the back, which was Damon's. Damon's was a huge office and kind of a hangout office where we would all be in. And then you had Jay's office right next door, who in his office, he had all these posters of the movie Heat, Scarface, and like other movies like that, which kind of also ignited me to want to use more of these characters and incorporate it because I saw how much he liked that. You know, that was also very telling. So there's a lot of subliminal things in there that kind of guided me without me even knowing. You know, subconsciously it's there. And I feel like, you know, that's very important to me, like how I was saying about these songs that get remade or me doing these quotes on the album. There's a sense of familiarity. There's a sense of guidance. You're pushed to liking things in life. You're pushed to not liking things in life, but it's subconsciously there. We just don't see it. So now that I look back 27 years later, you know, the World Trade Center 2 towers or these posters were kind of like guiding me to like, you know, do this. It's like a little voice in your head said, do this, say this. This is what this person likes, and you don't even realize it sometimes. And the key to life, for anyone listening to this, if you're trying to do something, try to follow those signs as best as you can. Like try to see that, try to see the pattern in everything, because there's patterns in everything. I mean, look at you, your story. I mean, I know you saw the signs, you saw the patterns, how you started when you were young with the Nets, and to lead it to now where you're at and what's to come. You got to follow that path, you know. It's always lit for you. You just have to see it, you know.
No, that's real. Tell me something. Damon Dash and Jay-Z to me were the Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan of the industry,
Right.
the manager and the artist, but they also doubled in so many different roles because of the fact that they were in an independent record label, in a major or an Indian.
Well, Damon didn't double roles. Damon quadruple, penta, octa. He octa roles. I mean, I got to give this man credit because, like I said, I did show up there like 1, 2 in the afternoon, and we had gone out the night before. Every night they were promoting Roc-A-Fella. They would go to the clubs. They would buy out the bars. Damon's there. He's buying everybody drinks. You know, I'm 16 years old. I got a champagne bottle in my hand that Damon put in my hand, and he's performing with Jay on the stage till 5, 4 in the morning. Now I go home, I go to sleep, and I get to go to school. When I come at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Damon had already been in the office. He slept in the office from the night before, and he's conducting business. And conducting business on behalf of not just Jay-Z, but all of Roc-A-Fella. You know, he's Jay-Z's manager at the same time, but he's also the CEO of Roc-A-Fella Records. So he's doing all this, and you know, the man has diabetes too. He's a diabetic. So I mean, to see that like was very inspiring, and also the love that he showed me at that time. You know, he believed in me as well. When I was just an intern in there, you know, he didn't have to do that. I remember vividly, I spoke to you about this before, like me and Damon would sit there and we would argue about what we're going to do as far as Reasonable Doubt is concerned. I'm an intern. I'm not down with the team. I'm just somebody that hands out flyers and stickers, and he's sitting there arguing with me about what we should do and like giving me that respect. And a lot of people confuse Damon. When Damon's arguing with you, he's giving you respect. Mm-hmm. And you know that in your own lives, because if you really love someone, you'll sit there and you will argue with them. When you don't care about somebody, you're like, yeah, you're right, whatever, it's cool. But when you care about something, when you care about someone, and you give them that respect, that you will sit there and actually argue your points with them. And sometimes you grow from that argument. You learn from arguing with someone you love, because they're going to make points that maybe, or they're going to put something in a perspective that you didn't see it. So I know Damon gets a bad rap sometimes, you know, because he one of the smartest people I've ever been around in my whole life. Damon Dash, smartest, business wise, or and he's so versed in other things too. He's great. He's one of the greats. And look at that, you paired two greats together, like how you said. It could be Pippen and Jordan, or it could be Jordan and LeBron. To me, it's like, or it could be Jordan and Magic or Bird. Like, it's more of a dream team than it would be the Bulls or an NBA team. I compare it more to a dream team because not only did you have Damon, you had Irv. Irv was there. You have Tata there. You have Beehive. You have Biggs. Look how smart Biggs is. So you're combining some of the greatest minds of that era to try to put together a project. It's almost like, The Apprentice or something like that. That Donald Trump show or something. Like, how can we put together these minds and like, now you have a task to do? I think they would have done great at anything they did. It wasn't just the music business or Roc-A-Fella Records. You put them together to construct something, they would have done it at that time. Because that's how on point everybody is and was, especially at that time.
When Jay and Dane went their separate ways, but split the company 50-50, the perception by media and consumers versus the people who were in it, how did they differ?
Well, I mean, everyone thinks it was like a falling out or something like that. I've seen them at the beginning, not the very beginning, because they got together like in '94. Clark Kent put them together. But I was there when they were just doing business together, and both had a common interest to blow up Jay and then blow up this label. And it was nothing but love. And they both thought very much alike and still do. They were both on the same plane. And Damon had as much passion for Jay than anybody. So I could only compare it to that friend that I was telling you about that, let me see that movie, Carlito's Way. I've never been around someone that wanted something from me more than I even wanted it for myself. He was pushing so hard. His name is Tenza. Big shout out to Tenza. He just wanted it so bad for me that he made me want it really bad for myself. And that's the only thing I could compare Jay and Damon to. Like, Damon wanted it for Jay maybe more even than Jay thought he wanted it for himself. You know what I mean? He was pushing hard and hard. So I think as time went on and you actually gain that, you actually garner what you were searching for, very much like sports, where you do have a Pippen and a Jordan, and then eventually you do win your championships. Now what? Now what do we do from here? I want to be this thing. Or maybe even Shaq and Kobe. They finally won their three-peat. Now Shaq goes out and goes to Miami and wins one with Wade, and then Kobe stays and wins two with Gasol. But still, that nucleus of them winning one together, or fighting to win one, and now you finally did it. Now you win another and another. It's like, okay, now what? We did it. We embarked on what we wanted. So I don't think it was a falling out or I hate you or nothing like that. Jay is Damon's son, godfather. I'm sorry. So I mean, they're always connected, and I don't think that there was a falling. I think that's the biggest misconception or perception. I'm sorry, of that story is that they're not cool or something like that. As we see, Jay shouted Dame out in his Hall of Fame induction speech. He said, "We may not always see eye to eye, but I can't deny your part in that story. I can't deny your greatness and what you did to aid me in being here." He's very much part of that. And I felt that too when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame. I felt like I was going in there as well. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which I was asked to be part of, but unfortunately I couldn't make it. Big shout out to Questlove. Questlove gave me a call and was like, "Yeah, we need you for this Hall of Fame induction because unfortunately due to COVID, it was all different now. Usually the Hall of Fame inductions, just like in sports, is a very big deal. It's a big ceremony. Someone enshrines you, which means actually gives a speech to get you in. And there was talks it was going to be Obama, but then it ended up being Dave Chappelle, thank God. And that because he did a great job. I mean, Obama did a great job too. But then after that, an artist comes up and does interpretation of your work. So you'll have, let's say, if the Beatles get inducted, or the Dogs, you know what I mean? Somebody will come up that's huge at the time, like the Foo Fighters, and they'll do an inspired set of your work. And then you come out, give your speech, and then you perform all your work. So it's like a nice little setup. But unfortunately, at the wrong time, you got inducted, because it was right after COVID. They scratched all that. And in lieu of that, they were going to do a video homage of these people quoting his lyrics. And big shout out to Questlove. He said, I want you to do your skit, the skit that you do on there as part of the homage. And I felt, very touched that he had, like, of all the things. I mean, you have all these A-listers: Samuel L. Jackson, Regina Hall, Obama, Beyonce, quoting Jay's lyrics to him, like, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. And then in there, Pharrell ends up saying my part. Okay, I'm reloaded. I'm like, oh wow, like, it's funny because that's not one of his lines, that's not his lyric, but it's very much associated with his career. And that's an honor to me, to be associated with that man's career. And not only that, but just him in general. That I did.
Over the years, you have replicated that in other music. I've remembered you being on Memphis Bleek's album. I remember you being on work with Fabulous as well. Fabulous was not part of Roc-A-Fella. However, being from Brooklyn and being adjacent to Jay through Roc Nation and more, it only makes sense that continued. How were you approached by Fabulous about doing that?
Oh, well, Fab was managed, and still is managed, or I don't know now, but he was managed by Desert Storm, which is Clue, DJ Clue, Webb, Nitty, all of them. So they're very much in the camp. They're always around. And so, we're working with this new artist. At the time, he was new. And, he has this song that he's doing, like, Scarface in it. It's like the bad guy. He was talking like he's the bad guy. He goes, there's no one else that could do that but you. So, again, I was honored to be part of that, because when I heard the song, I'm in the studio, I'm like, yo, this, again, like with the snippets, like, this is incredible work. Who is this guy? Like, yo, this is Fab. This is the next one. And when I did it, I laid it down, and then, I started listening to some of his work when the album came out. Album also came out on September 11th, of 2001, the day the towers fell. Same day that the Blueprint came out, which, again, like I said, was foreshadowing, because the office was right at the bottom of the World Trade Center, two towers. So it was always weird to me that, Jay's album drops on that day, and, the office at the time, they already left, but the office was there. It was officially, now called Ground Zero. And that's really what it was at the beginning of Roc-A-Fella. It was Ground Zero in the metaphoric way. Like, it was the zero, and then we were working our way up from there. And now it officially became known as Ground Zero, unfortunately, due to those terrible events. So, those, again, the signs, the subconscious, how everything is connected. September 11th, towers, the office, everything is kind of like together. So, when I heard that after that day, because obviously nobody was listening to music that day in New York, I finally got around to listening to the project. I was like, this guy's incredible. I love this Fabulous. This is dope. And then I really liked the song that we did together. It was a good song. And now eventually he took it to the next level, and just became bigger and bigger, and became a huge star in his own right. So, that's an honor working with him.
What are one or two things that you'd like to do? We're joined by Pain in the Ass, Scoopy Radio, all streaming platforms. What are one or two things that you'd like to do professionally, in this music space, or even in voiceover space, with all of the success that you've had over the last 27 years?
What I like to do is I like creating characters. So I always, like I said before in one of your interviews, I always fashion myself like a producer, yes, but also more like a graffiti artist, just to take it back to the elements of hip hop. This is the 50th anniversary of hip hop. So graffiti to me was always very, very important growing up. I loved just the whole persona of a graffiti artist. Here's a person that gets his ups, and you see it tagged all over the place, but you don't know who that person is. You know, you just know him by his tag. And with his tag, they add a little character to it. So, you know, back in the early 90s, I remember we had these shirts that we would wear. It was Black Bart. It was Bart Simpson, but he had like dreads. But, you know, it was cool. It was cool. I like that. So graffiti incorporates that, where they take like Tweety Bird and he'll have like a gun in his hand, or you'll have like Woody Woodpecker and he's like pecking away at the guy's name in the tag. And I'm like, yo, that's so cool, because that's really what I like to do with my voice. I consider my voice to be that. I'm going to get my ups. I'm going to let you know it's me. I'm going to do some gangster, but I want to alter the voice so you don't know it's me. I want to be like a graffiti artist. I want to switch it up. I want to do something out of the box. And I love doing that in the studio. I love becoming something else or someone else and doing a skit incorporated in there that pertains to the artist I'm working with. And my favorite part would be, because I'm a perfectionist, and I sit there and I could go for hours and hours trying to do this, is when I get out of the studio or the booth and I get into the control room and I turn off all the lights and I listen to myself and I say to myself, does this sound like the characters I want? And my aim is to get to a point where I scare myself, like, oh shit, that doesn't even sound like me anymore. That sounds like from a movie, or that sounds like this character or that character. That is my favorite part of doing what I do. And I love when I hear from the artist say, yo, this sounds like a movie. Like, you just inspired me to want to go do something.
Who is on your Mount Rushmore of lyricists, past and present?
Lyricist or like artist?
Your world, we just live in it.
Okay. Well, I mean, you know, one person that really doesn't get mentioned a lot, but to me is hands down one of the great KRS-One. You know, knowledge reigns supreme, you know, above almost everyone. I love KRS-One. I just growing up, he was just, his voice, what he's saying, the message, powerful. So I got to put him up there as one. Obviously Big, you know, Biggie's up there. You know, I heard an interview that Bleak gave once, where saying Big was the only one that rhymed every word. You know, you're gonna have 2 spots, 2 for $5, hit the blue tops, gotta go. Like, he didn't rhyme like how normally you would rhyme, where you just the last 2 words rhyme. Like, he made every word in the sequence rhyme, which is crazy. That's insane. So I have to put him up there. You know, obviously Nas. You know, Nas did stuff that no one ever did. No one ever rhymed about being a gun and painted such a vivid picture, you know, where he compared himself to actually being a gun. No one, and maybe someone has done the gun thing, but no one has ever rhymed a story backwards, rewinded it for you like in those VHS tapes. Because I vomit out the ice back in the cup. I put back on my drink. Like, he rewinded the story. That's some Alfred Hitchcock Twilight Zone type joint. No one's doing that, so he has to be up there. And of course, then, you know, lastly to me is, obviously, I'm biased. You know, I'm always going to say Jay is up there. That would be my 4.
You had Biggie, Jay-Z, and Nas all on that Mount Rushmore, which I appreciate. Memphis Bleak told me that the verses would not be valid because Nas did not have enough tracks. I'm not going to hem you up, but I am going to ask this question. Mm-hmm. If not Nas, if Jay were to do a versus, then who?
Well, I would say I want to see a versus of Jay and Nas, but not your catalog. I always said this. I don't want to see their catalog against each other. I want to see the final bout, the main event. I want to see Reasonable Doubt against Illmatic. That would be a versus for me. Not the catalog, not, you know, what you've done and what he's done. Give me the Bibles against each other. Give me Illmatic against Reasonable Doubt. That would be my versus. Them perform to strictly that work and see, because that's always been the argument. And God rest Biggie's soul, he's no longer here. You know, Ready to Die is up in that category. But as far as the greatest works of all time, Illmatic is up there, and so is Reasonable Doubt. And if you're going to have a versus of them two, that's what I want to see.
Who's winning?
That's a very, very difficult one. But I mean, of course, you're asking a guy that starts off one of the albums. So maybe I would be that little missing piece that pushes us over the edge. I'll lay down that bunt, but I'll give the assist, the alley oop, so Jay can slam it. But I mean, the only reason I like it, I like the battle, is because it's also an eras thing. It's also a generational thing, as far as like you're having 96 against 94, which are two big years in hip hop. And you also have the production, which is from that time. And the production from that time is very distinct. They both have Premier mostly on it. Premier is on both those albums. So you're having those beats, which is one of the biggest gripes with Nas, is that after that, he always, didn't really choose the best beats. But on Illmatic, he certainly did, because you had an all-star team of producers. Your Large Professor, you have Premier, you had Pete Rock, and then, of course, Q-Tip. Whereas here on Reasonable Doubt, you have 3 joints from Premier, but it's mostly Clark Kent, and a lot of it Ski influenced. So, you're getting kind of like different directors. I kind of compare it kind of like Scarface and Carlito's Way in a weird way. It's the same kind of concept, but it's a different version of it. So, whereas Nas would be like Scarface, the movie, up and coming, trying to make it, and then finally doing it and living large. Whereas in Reasonable Doubt, Jay is more Carlito. I'm out of that game now. You think that game is cool? That's not what you think. I'm trying to get into this game. I already been there, done that. So it's like two different points of views of the street. And like I said, it's considered 2 of the greatest albums of all time. But I obviously, and I'm sure people would argue with me, but I would give the edge to Jay, only because, he's been there, done that mentality. Works well. It meshed well on that album.
That's the clip, right?
Right there, right there. That's the one people are gonna talk crap about me, like, that stupid asshole. What the fuck is he talking about, man? First of all, he don't know nothing. He don't know nothing. He just did the voices on this, so now he thinks he's an expert. How about you? Let me ask you, what do you think? Who do you think wins in that versus? Not Nas versus Jay-Z. Illmatic versus Reasonable Doubt.
Well, I'm partial too, damn it. I'm gonna say Jay.
Yeah. Can I ask you? Can he ask you why you think he would win in that battle of that?
Because I feel like part of the difference between Illmatic and Jay and that 2-year span is, even though 96 was Jay's first album, he had a whole life experience when he put pen to paper before then. And not to say Nas didn't, but I feel like Jay approached Reasonable Doubt from an executive level before he was given an executive title. And so his delivery was already from that perspective of role player, star player, coach, GM, president, and star player all at the same time. I feel like the Illmatic album was, I don't want to take away from Nas's greatness, but however, I feel as though he came in as the artist and did what he needed to do. The business aspect, the music showmanship is what I appreciated most about Reasonable Doubt.
Right. The presentation too, and what he was trying to tell. I mean, it's funny because it's very similar. The albums are very similar. You have the intro, you have my intro, and then you go straight, and then you have his intro, which I love too. He's just talking, you're gonna do this shit. He goes, you're gonna have a medal. He took a scene from a movie,
right?
And he started off. So it's kind of similar beginning. Then you have Can't Knock the Hustle, and then he goes into New York State of Mind. Which one of those 2 do you favor out of those 2 first ones? I
think New York State of Mind, it crossed over more at the beginning. I feel like Can't Knock the Hustle, you had to go back and appreciate it.
So in other words, time has revealed it to be, because I do that all the time. Like we have this argument, like we were talking about before, about being with the Bill Walton interview that you recently just did, where they can go hear that, which is a very great interview. You talk about how he believes that Danny Ainge belongs in the Hall of Fame. I have this argument all the time with Crystal, where we talk about the year 1994, the Oscars. They had for the best motion picture, Forrest Gump and Shawshank Redemption and Pulp Fiction. They were all in the same category, and they gave it to Forrest Gump. And I thought it was a great movie. I love that movie. And they also gave the best actor to Tom Hanks, who had just won the year before for Philadelphia. When in the same category, you had Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins for Shawshank Redemption and John Travolta for Pulp Fiction. Now, at the time, I felt, yes, that's very deserving. I love Forrest Gump. And I think Tom Hanks did an amazing job. But as the years have gone by and that movie, Shawshank Redemption, has grown on me and I've gotten older and I understand it more, I think that's the biggest robbery of all time. Because time has revealed the greatness of that movie. At that time, the movie tanked in the box office. It was only after repeated play on cable that the movie took on a life of its own. So very similar with those albums. In 94, Nas's album went gold, which is a big deal at the time, but that's not, astronomical numbers. Reasonable Doubt came out and it was on an independent label and it did very well for being on an independent, but it didn't really reach platinum status. It wasn't until years and years later that you go back and you say, oh, Jay-Z becomes bigger and bigger and it becomes more successful, that you go back and listen to it.
Yep.
They said the same thing about, not to get very religious on you, but they said the same thing about Christ at the time of his death, back in the year 33, after he resurrected and came back. They wanted to go back in time and say, who was this man? After he showed his greatness. They go back to the beginning and say, all right, well, where's he from? How to get born? And they wrote the Bible because of that, because they wanted to know, or the New Testament of the Bible. I'm sorry, because there was a whole other Old Testament that dealt with Moses and everything that went on there. But they wrote the newer testament of the Bible based on the fact that, who was this man? Was this the prophet that we were waiting for? So I think very similar with the Illmatic and Reasonable Doubt is that it wasn't until after these guys became the magnetic forces that they are that people went back and said, well, let me see what happened at the beginning. I do that a lot with shows. I'll jump in on a show like The Sopranos or something. I'm like, oh, this show is great, but I'm in season 3. I'm like, I love the show. And I'll go back and I'll start watching season 1 and season, oh my God, this is fantastic work. No wonder this show was talked about by everybody I know. But I wasn't up on season 1. They were. And it wasn't until I loved season 3 that I went back and started watching season 1. So I think it's very similar with those two bodies of work, is that, at the time they did very well on the street level, but time proved it to be great. And I think that's the one thing about Reasonable Doubt, is that as time has gone on, the greatness of that album grows and grows and grows. And especially the fact that they're both doing what they're doing still 27 years later. And in Nas's case, 29 years later, he's still relevant, still coming out with great work, makes the first one, The Inception, even bigger and greater.
He gave his sports analysis, his hip hop analysis, and even gave us
some religious.
Oh, of course, but that's where I first learned who you were. We've talked about this before on the Hard Knock Life tour DVD, where you had the palms, and
that was Palm Sunday '99. I'll never forget that day, because my same friend, big shout out to him, Tenza, came to the church. Jay was performing in Long Island in Nassau County, and I usually serve the 5:30 mass at my church, St. Michael's in Flushing, and we were talking on the phone the night before, like, yo, you want to go to this concert, man? You got to perform. I was like, nah, man. It's Sunday. It's Palm Sunday. I can't go. I got to go to church. He was, yo, what's wrong with you? You crazy? You got to perform. They're waiting for you. I was like, nah, I think I'm gonna skip this one. I'll spot date the next one. So I served the mass. I went there. I had my palms, and all of a sudden I turn around. I see this guy who never goes to church at all. And he's there. He's like, yo, you ready? I was like, what, we're leaving now? And he drove me all the way to Long Island. I missed the tour bus. And he drove me all the way there just so I can be there that night, and ended up changing my life as well, because it got me into that Backstage movie where, a lot of people were able to put 2 and 2 together and know that it's me doing those voices on that album. And as you see, the way I interact with them, you see Jay is punching me, that's Jay is. You see Damon saying, oh, I can't take him on tour because he's too crazy, but that's my man. But I love that, because it shows you really how they feel about me. You know what I mean? And that's what I love about that was documented the way it was, because that's who Damon is. That's who Jay is. You know what I mean? They, playful, joking. Big brothers. They just been like big brothers to me, and for no apparent reason other than the fact that they liked me. You know what I mean? On some cool shit. And at that time, I really needed that. I needed a big brother figure. I have no mother, and you know, my father is not in my life like that. So, and it's just my sister raising me, and it's when you have that as a man, as a boy, and you're growing into a man, and there's no male figures in your life, you know, that's something that you lack, and your actions throughout your life will reflect that. You know, I was raised by all women. My mother raised me until she died, and my sister raised me. My grandmother was there. There was a lot of female influence, which was great. But as a boy, turning into a man, you need a male figure. And what happens is sometimes in the communities we're from, there's not that many male figures in the house, so we turn to alternate the avenues to do that. And sometimes those men that take us under our wings, under their wings, don't have the best intentions for us, you know. And you know that here I got so blessed that these guys did. They did have the best intentions for me, you know. And like I said, created a career for me that I didn't even know was there for me, or accessible or available to me. And thank God for that. I always thank God for bringing them to my life and bringing me around them. Damon, Biggs, Jay, Tata, Beehive, and Tenzer. You know, these Ray Ray, all these people that he brought around that were able to teach me valuable lessons, not about the music business, not about rapping, not about Roc-A-Fella, but about life. You know, that was the best, and that's what Reasonable Doubt means to me. That is a documentation, and then that's like the Bible of what they were trying to teach me. You know, stop being stupid, stop doing stupid things. I remember Damon throwing me in his office, punching me on my arm like, "You stupid, man, you messing everything up." You know, they paid for me to go to college. You know, I graduated high school on June 25th, 1996, the day Reasonable Doubt came out. Now, I graduated from high school that day not knowing what I was going to do with my life.
Right.
I was going to be another statistic, or I was, you know, really kind of going down a path of nowhere. And it's very also with the subliminal situations. I graduate that day, and that album that I start off comes out that day. And it was like a double graduation. I graduated school, and then I graduated into the game. And, you know, they asked me, "What are you going to do with yourself now?" And I was like, "I don't know." "Was you better go to school?" I was like, "I don't got money, you know, I don't got money like that back then. What am I going to do? We'll pay for you to go to college." And they paid for me to go to, you know, it was community college at the time, but they still paid for me. They gave me that. They gave me education, both knowledge of the ways of the street and the ways of the music business, but knowledge that I can use for the rest of my life. I'm always grateful to them for that.
27 years later, standing tall.
27 years later, yeah. Here I am in the back seat of a car after I got pulled over. Look at that. See that? All that wisdom, man.
Yes, sir.
No, but I mean, it's a very special day. And as also like today, you know, today, June 25th, but, you know, I spoke to you earlier, June 19th, Juneteenth. It's also a very special day that years later was acknowledged, but it's always been special. It's just now it's being acknowledged on a higher level. So, you know, June 25th has always been special to me. And now as the years go by, you know, it just becomes more and more of a heightened day for everyone. I mean, obviously, you know, we also lost Michael Jackson on this day. Big shout out to Mike. You know, God rest his soul. And I'm very blessed to have been alive to see his contributions to the world at that time that he did them. But, you know, as far as personally is concerned with this album, the more we distance ourselves from 1996, June 25th, June 25th becomes more and more important every year. Almost like, you know, God rest your mom's soul, my mom's soul, that those days, they stick with you. You know, my mother's date is November 7th. I always remember that date. My grandmother's date is April 14th. That's a special day. And as time, I mean, it started out as a tragedy that day, but as time has gone on, they become more of a special day for me. You know, that's the day that, you know, they spiritually became who they are, but they physically left, but more spiritually. March 9th is a big day now, 26 years later. When was Mom's Day?
February 21st, 2022.
So now we're going on year 2, but I know she's still there with you, and she's proud of all that you're doing. And we're all proud of what you're doing. Man.
Thank you, brother.
These interviews, and this is just the jump off point. That's all this is.
Yes, sir.
There's more in store for Scoop.
Of course, more in store for you too.
I'm trying. We'll see what's up. I've been doing a lot of voiceover stuff, so I'm very happy with that. You asked me one of the things that I like. I do love doing these audio books that I've been doing lately, which are really cool. And they call me to do video games, which is also really, really cool. Go in there and get into the booth and become these characters while you're seeing it on the screen, animated. You're like, oh man, this is cool. What me as an artist am I gonna lend to this character of this anime that I see? Okay, he's got a little tweaky voice, whatever. He's like talks like this, Yeah, I want to get my money, or something like that. I want to add character to it. I want to build on that. So, wait, this is. See in a minute. I'm gonna pause there.
Brother,
I love you.
I love you too. Thank you for your time.
No, of course. I'm proud of you, man.
Yes, sir.
And it's always fun talking to you. We always talk like this regardless.
Yes.
Love you, man. Thank you for having me.
Brother, thank you for your time.
Hick in the pain.